To understand the story of Greece, its civilization, its culture, its resilience, we must begin not with kings or wars, but with the land itself. For Greece is not merely a country marked on a map, it is a landscape carved by gods and time, where geography shaped destiny. Greece is nestled in the southeastern corner of Europe, at the crossroads of three continents, Europe, Asia, and Africa. It borders Albania, North Macedonia, Bulgaria, and Turkey. But what truly defines Greece is not its borders, but its breathtaking terrain, shaped by millennia of tectonic upheaval and weathered by ancient winds. The first thing one notices about Greece is its mountains. Nearly 80% of the country is mountainous, making it one of the most rugged nations in Europe. The Pindus mountain range, often called the spine of Greece, stretches from the northwest to the southeast like the vertebrae of a mythic titan. These peaks, often snow-capped in winter, have historically separated regions, isolated communities, and shaped dialects and customs. Among the most legendary of these peaks is Mount Olympus. Towering at 2,917 meters, it is the highest mountain in Greece and the fabled home of the Olympian gods. Here, in the mist-covered heights, ancient Greeks believed Zeus ruled the heavens, and the other deities watched over mortals from their celestial thrones. To the west, the mountains descend into verdant valleys and rolling foothills, feeding into plains like Thessaly and Macedonia, fertile stretches where grain and olives grow under a golden sun. These lowlands, rare in a mostly mountainous land, became the agricultural heart of the Greek mainland, sustaining communities from antiquity to modern times. To the south, the land splinters into the Peloponnese, a large peninsula connected to the mainland by the narrow isthmus of Corinth. This rugged region, famous for ancient cities like Sparta and Corinth, is a land of dramatic contrasts, fertile plains hemmed in by harsh mountains, and coasts lined with ancient harbors that once launched fleets to war and trade. Yet, to truly grasp Greek geography, one must look to the sea. Greece is a maritime nation, its identity forged as much by water as by stone. With a coastline stretching over 13,000 kilometers, longer than most countries many times its size, Greece has one of the most complex and fragmented coastal geographies in the world. Nowhere in Greece is one more than 137 kilometers from the sea. The Aegean Sea lies to the east, its waters a shimmering blue tapestry dotted with islands, each bearing witness to layers of human history. The Ionian Sea to the west is calmer, its coasts more verdant and gentle, with the wind whispering through the olive groves and cypress trees of Corfu and Kephallonia. But it is the islands that have always defined the Greek experience. Over 6,000 islands and islets are scattered across the Aegean and Ionian Seas, though only about 227 are inhabited. Each island is a world unto itself, some rocky and arid, others green and fertile. Some are homes to great cities like Rhodes and Heraklion, others are humble fishing villages where the rhythm of life has changed little in centuries. The Cyclades, with their whitewashed houses and blue-domed churches, lie in the central Aegean and are synonymous with Greek beauty. The Dodecanese to the southeast whisper tales of knights and ancient traders. Crete, the largest island, boasts towering mountains, deep gorges, and a history that predates Homer. And the North Aegean islands, Lesbos, Chios, and others, have long stood as cultural bridges between Europe and Asia. The seas surrounding Greece are not only beautiful but vital. They have served as highways of commerce, conduits of culture, and theaters of naval warfare. From the time of the Minoans and Mycenaeans to the fleets of Athens and Byzantium, Greece's geography demanded its people become sailors, traders, and adventurers. But while the seas have connected, the mountains have divided. Throughout ancient and even modern history, the rugged terrain of Greece made overland travel difficult. This geographic fragmentation led to the development of fiercely independent city-states like Athens, Sparta, Thebes, and Corinth, each with its own government, military, and identity. Unity was rare, rivalry was the norm. The very geography that nurtured civilization also fueled competition, innovation, and, at times, war. And yet, this diversity gave birth to greatness. The isolation of mountain valleys and islands preserved local traditions, dialects, and innovations. The constant interplay between land and sea created a dynamic environment where ideas flowed as freely as the winds across the Aegean. It was this geographic diversity that helped nurture philosophy in Athens, military discipline in Sparta, and maritime power in Corinth. Climate, too, plays a crucial role in Greek geography. Most of the country enjoys a Mediterranean climate, hot, dry summers and mild, wet winters. This climate is ideal for growing olives, grapes, and citrus, the very foundation of Greek cuisine and commerce since antiquity. In the northern highlands, winters are harsher, with snowfall blanketing the mountains, while the southern islands bask in year-round sunshine. Rivers in Greece are relatively short and not navigable, yet they carve deep gorges and nourish the valleys. The Aegas, the Aliakmon, and the Evros are among the major rivers, flowing from the mountains to the seas. Lakes like Prespa and Trichonida add to the ecological richness, providing habitats for rare birds and aquatic life. Greece's geography has also made it vulnerable. Its location at the crossroads of civilizations has meant frequent invasions. Persians, Romans, Byzantines, Ottomans, all passed through or occupied this rugged land. Earthquakes, too, are common, born from the meeting of tectonic plates beneath the region. Yet this land endures. From the misty heights of Olympus to the sun-kissed shores of Santorini, from the wind-carved cliffs of Meteora to the green valleys of Epirus, Greece is a land of contrasts and convergence. It is a geography that tells a story of isolation and connection, of hardship and beauty, of myth and reality. And in understanding this geography, we understand not just where Greece is, but why Greece is. Long before marble temples crowned the Acropolis, before philosophers wandered under olive trees, before heroes sailed to Troy or stood against Persian legions, there was another Greece, ancient, mysterious, and shrouded in the mists of time. This was the Greece of stone tools, of painted pottery, of sun-drenched islands that birthed myths older than writing. The roots of Greek civilization lie deep in prehistory, in a land sculpted not just by geography, but by the perseverance of its earliest people. Human presence in Greece dates back tens of thousands of years. Archaeological findings show that early hominids roamed this terrain during the Paleolithic era, as far back as 200,000 years ago. In caves like Franchthai in the Argolid and Theopetra in Thessaly, evidence of continuous habitation emerges: stone tools, animal bones, and later, the ashes of hearths where families once gathered around fire. Here, humanity survived ice ages and hunted wild game across vast plains now submerged by the sea. As the last glacial age waned and the world grew warmer, the Neolithic Revolution found its way into the valleys and coasts of Greece. Around 7000 BC, agriculture appeared, not as a sudden miracle, but as a slow transformation. The people of this land began to settle, to cultivate wheat and barley, to raise sheep and goats, to form the earliest villages that would become the seeds of Greek civilization. One of the most significant Neolithic cultures to arise in this era was the Sesklo culture, centered in Thessaly. By 1600 BC, the inhabitants of Sesklo were building rectangular, mud-brick homes on stone foundations. They crafted elegant pottery, often decorated in red and white patterns, and created some of the earliest known representations of the human form, figurines that may have symbolized fertility, motherhood, or the divine. Not far from Sesklo, another settlement would rise to prominence, Dimini. Slightly younger but more advanced, Dimini showed signs of planned architecture, fortification walls, and centralized structures, perhaps early hints of social hierarchy. These villages, modest though they may seem, laid the cultural foundation for what would become the most influential civilization in the ancient world. But it was not only on the mainland that Neolithic culture took root. On the islands of the Aegean, Crete, the Cyclades, and the Dodecanese, life evolved along parallel lines. Here, the sea offered abundance and connection, turning isolated communities into nodes of trade and innovation. As the 3rd millennium BC approached, Greece entered the early Bronze Age, a time of rapid change. The use of bronze, an alloy of copper and tin, transformed tools, weapons, and art. Villages became towns. Trade networks expanded. And from the fertile plains of Crete emerged a civilization that would dazzle the ancient world, the Minoans. Centered on the island of Crete, the Minoan civilization flourished from around 2600 BC to 1400 BC. Their palaces, most famously at Knossos, but also at Phaistos, Malea, and Zakros, were architectural wonders of their time. Multi-storied, complex, and adorned with vibrant frescoes, these palaces were not just royal residences, but centers of administration, economy, and religion. The frescoes that line their walls depict scenes of daily life, nature, and ceremony, youths leaping over bulls, women in flounced skirts, dolphins swimming in bright blue seas. The Minoans were a seafaring people. Their ships ventured far, to Egypt, to the Levant, to mainland Greece. Through these journeys, they became both traders and transmitters of culture, spreading their influence across the Aegean. Their writing system, Linear A, remains undeciphered, but their legacy is evident in myth and material. Some scholars believe the Minoan world inspired the legend of Atlantis, an advanced civilization lost beneath the waves. But no civilization stands alone. On the Greek mainland, another culture began to rise, the Mycenaeans. From the hilltop citadels of Mycenae, Tiryns, and Pylos, these warrior kings ruled a network of fortified city-states, each commanded by a wanax, or high king. Their civilization, flourishing between 1600 BC and 1100 BC, was marked by martial strength, economic complexity, and a connection to the heroic age later immortalized by Homer. The Mycenaeans borrowed much from the Minoans, their art, their writing, adapting Linear A into Linear B, which has been deciphered, and their architecture, but their world was more militarized, their palaces more fortified, and their tombs more monumental. The great beehive-shaped tholos tombs, like the so-called treasury of Atrus, housed the remains of elite warriors and kings, buried with gold masks, weapons, and goods, symbols of their power and prestige. Mycenaean Greece was a vibrant and interconnected world. Palatial centers oversaw bureaucratic economies, where scribes recorded inventories on clay tablets, and craftsmen worked in bronze, ivory, and precious stones. Their gods, precursors to the Olympians, began to take recognizable form. Poseidon, Zeus, and Hera are named in their texts, whispering the early notes of myths that would echo for millennia. But like the Minoans before them, the Mycenaeans would fall. Around 1200 BC, the eastern Mediterranean was plunged into crisis. The causes are debated: climate change, invasions, internal rebellion, the movement of the so-called Sea Peoples. But the result was clear: palaces were burned, cities abandoned, trade routes severed. Greece entered a period of decline known as the Greek Dark Age. For centuries, written language vanished. Monumental architecture ceased. Population declined. Yet in this darkness, the embers of culture remained. Oral traditions preserved the memory of past glory. Craftsmen still worked in iron. Communities reorganized into villages and clans. Slowly, the people of Greece adapted to new realities. By the 8th century BC, the dawn returned. Writing was reintroduced, this time with an alphabet adapted from the Phoenicians. City-states, or polis, began to emerge across the landscape, from Athens to Corinth, from Thebes to Sparta. Colonies were founded far afield, in Italy, North Africa, and Asia Minor. The epic poems of Homer, the Iliad and the Odyssey, gave voice to the heroic past, while providing moral and cultural touchstones for generations to come. This was not yet classical Greece, but it was the beginning. The geography of the land, the mountains, seas, and islands, continued to shape human settlement. The lessons of the Minoans and Mycenaeans lived on in pottery, architecture, and political organization. The gods once worshipped in Bronze Age sanctuaries were now honored in stone temples, their myths woven into the very fabric of Greek identity. The prehistoric and early history of Greece is not just a tale of beginnings. It is a story of resilience, adaptation, and memory. Each age, stone, bronze, and iron, laid a foundation for what was to come. A civilization that would question the nature of existence, that would build temples to logic and democracy, that would stand at the center of Western civilization.